Welcome to Productive AF, the podcast for second act entrepreneurs, neurodivergent go getters, and anyone ready to rewrite their productivity story in a more intuitive way. I'm your host, Jen Fast, and today I'm thrilled to welcome Dr. Alice Rizzi, a licensed psychologist, mindfulness coach, and the heart behind Together Mindful. Alice specializes in cognitive behavioral therapy, mindfulness, and helping high achievers break free from stress, anxiety, and OCD. Her work is all about empowering women to build self-trust, live in alignment with their values, and make real, sustainable change. Alice, welcome. I'm so glad you're here.
Hi, Jen. Thank you so much for having me. It's a pleasure.
Let's start with your story. What inspired you to create Together Mindful and your practice? And was there a pivotal moment or a personal struggle that really shaped your approach?
Yeah, so I actually started both of my businesses during lockdown, during the pandemic. I was working for another therapy group practice, and the reason I was actually working there is because I had missed the social aspect of like working together. I missed having colleagues. So I joined this practice that had like 16 or 18 different people, and it was wonderful. And we had clinical consultations, and it was nice chatting to peers. And then 4 months later, we went into lockdown. And so everybody was home. We got isolated again. And I was working with clients one on one from my house. And it was just this mental switch of like, well, I'm doing all of the same things that I would be doing if I were working for myself. So why am I giving away half of my paycheck to somebody else for an office that I'm no longer in? So that inspired me to create my first business, which is my therapy private practice in New York. And I'm also a telehealth provider in Florida. And so while I was building up my marketing, setting up my website, like waiting for clients to find me, essentially, I was taking a lot of different courses and programs, and I started working with different coaches. And after a while, it became clear like, oh, this is really interesting for me. And it's something that I could actually see myself doing. And so I started taking courses on making courses. And one of the biggest pieces of advice that I saw is they said, build a course on something that you never get tired of talking about, like something that you're super passionate about. And for me, that's mindfulness. I've been practicing, researching, and teaching others about mindfulness since about 2012. And so I have a lot of experience with it. It's been pivotal in my own life. And I think, especially during the pandemic, so many of us realized that these are essential skills that we could benefit from. I think a lot more people started practicing meditation and practices of like kindness and compassion and non-judgment, which are all both personal and professional values of mine. And so the thought was if I can help more people become more mindful and we can see potentially the social ripple effects of that from more mindful societies, then I would love to be a part of that. So that's how Together Mindful was born.
You have called mindfulness a superpower. How did you personally discover its impact, and what was your earliest aha moment with mindfulness?
I would say it's been a journey because I first learned about it in my undergrad program. So I want to say I was like 19, maybe 20 years old. And the way that it was presented was like, this is your solution to have inner peace. And I was like, ooh, yes, I will take some peace. I will take some enlightenment. I will take some transcendence. Like, send all of that my way. And of course, it was none of those things, especially not in the beginning. But it did help me manage my own anxiety. So, as a teenager, I had a lot of social anxiety. I had a lot of what I thought were like quirks, which, to be fair, now in hindsight, I'm like, oh, that could have been ADHD. That could have been maybe some aspects of autism. That was just me not knowing how to express myself. And so the mindfulness really helped with all of that. And there's so much research that shows that it helps with anxiety, it helps with depression, it helps with emotion regulation, it helps with focus and with attention, it helps us communicate better. And so those were all of the reasons that made me want to study it more. And the more I studied it, like you could say, the more I fell in love with it. And then the more I would teach it to my clients, the more they would say, Alice, this is fantastic. Why don't more people do this? And I was like, I know, they should. And so it kind of kept going from there. But it's almost like with every year that I practice it, my own practice deepens, and the more benefits I uncover, and the more myself I become. And my clients find that that's true for them as well. So for me, I feel like it's a lifelong practice and teaching and passion. And like, there's no going back at this point.
I love that you practice what you teach. Your work bridges not only mindfulness, but psychology and something called embodiment. How do you define embodiment? And what's a simple practice that you recommend for someone who wants to feel more present in their body and their life?
Yeah, so I think mindfulness as a whole is a practice in embodiment because when we are mindful, we are present in this moment. And specifically, I define mindfulness as the quality of being present with awareness, acceptance, kindness, compassion, curiosity, and non judgment. So I believe that mindfulness helps us embody those qualities, meaning the more we practice mindfulness, the more aware we become, the more accepting and compassionate and curious we become. And when we sit down, especially to practice mindfulness meditation, those are the qualities that we are cultivating. And those are the experience from our day to day lives that we sit with in the practice, that we practice processing, embodying, integrating, and that we take with us back into like our day to day life. But the reason I started calling myself a mindful embodiment coach is because core values in general, like values and goals, are really important to me. And if it's helpful, I don't mind giving a brief definition of the two of
Yes.
them.
Yeah.
I guess as a little bit of a side note. So, goals are things that we can typically just check off our list. It's a thing that I say I want to do, and then I do it, and then I cross it off my list. Whereas values, we can't just check off, we never arrive at. We can only ever be going in the direction of our values. So almost like if you think of like a compass, like if I'm sailing north in a boat, right? Like I never reach north. I can only ever sail towards north, but I could sail to Italy or Antarctica or Canada or wherever. So those are goals or ports I can check off. So I have found that the more people live in alignment with their values, the more fulfilled they feel, the happier they feel, the more free and joyful they feel. So when I say I'm a mindful embodiment coach, that means I help other people embody their values. So whatever it is that you say is important to you, I want to help you sail in that direction. And I want you to be able to check off those things along the way that are important for you.
To go back to what you mentioned about mindful meditation, is there a difference
Mhm.
between mindfulness and meditation? And how can someone start if they feel like they can't sit still?
Those are such great questions. Um, we'll tackle them one by one. So, yes, mindfulness and mindfulness meditation are related but different concepts. So, you can be mindful in your day to day life. So, let's say you're taking a walk and suddenly you become aware of like the smell of fresh cut grass, or you notice the warmth from the sun shining on your face, or you just take a deep breath and you feel like each inhale and each exhale in your body. In that moment, like that's just a spontaneous moment of mindfulness in your life. You can also practice like day to day mindfulness doing any kind of chores around the house. So a lot of times I'll love if I'm doing the dishes, which is a chore I hate doing, but if I practice doing it with mindfulness, I enjoy the experience just a little bit better. And the easiest way that I find to do that is through the five senses. So noticing what the dish soap smells like, noticing how like fluffy or hard the sponge is in my hands, noticing the weight of the plates or the cups that I'm washing, noticing the temperature of the water. All those moments of noticing, that's me being mindful and present in this moment with this one thing that I'm doing, which is the dishes. And you can apply the same kind of mindfulness to folding the laundry, to eating, to tidying, to dusting, to whatever you're doing. You can choose to be mindful in that moment. Mindfulness meditation is time that we set aside specifically to be mindful. And so a lot of times we do it in a sitting posture, in a laying down posture, though theoretically you could do some mindful movement as well, which is what yoga is. Yoga is mindful movement or meditation through using your body. And so the way that we practice that is we pick one thing to practice being mindful of for a certain duration of time. So, like 5 minutes, 10 minutes, a half hour, whatever it is. Personally, I love shorter meditations because I consider myself a busy individual. And so I have to manage my time really effectively. And I have found that like somewhere between 7 and 15 minutes is like the perfect amount of time for me to practice a mindfulness meditation. I get the benefits from it. I feel better right after doing it. And I still feel the cumulative benefits of the practice over time. Other people might find that they like 15 minutes or 30 minutes. Some people even do an hour, and that's a matter of personal preference. But you can get like a lot of the benefits of it with just 7 to 10 minutes a day.
That's good to know. I might have to try doing my dishes with mindfulness. It's one of my least favorite chores, too. Now, many in our audience are navigating things like perimenopause, neurodivergence, or big life pivots. How does mindfulness intersect with these kinds of transitions?
So on the whole, my one of the biggest like long-term benefits of mindfulness is decreased reactivity. So what that means is like if you feel your stress levels rising, and you might even consider yourself somebody who has like a short fuse, meaning like it doesn't take much for you to like explode, to yell, to curse, to whatever. Some people might like break a dish or drop something or become really scatterminded. That's all because of reactivity to our like situational environment, to whatever is happening. The more you practice mindfulness, the more you lower that sense of reactivity, meaning it's going to take a lot more for your fuse to break. So, like, yes, you will still feel agitation, stress, frustration from things happening to you. But there's that moment where you can pause and think about, like, well, what do I want to do in response to this? I could react automatically. I could throw something. I could yell something at somebody, but I know that wouldn't be aligned with my values. And so mindfulness almost like builds in that gap so that you don't feel like you flip a switch automatically and now you're like angry mom or angry boss or whatever it is. You're like, what kind of person do I want to be? Despite the struggle, despite the anxiety, despite the frustration, how do I want to respond in this situation? You remember what your values actually are, and then you're able to act accordingly. And so, with neurodivergence, with anxiety, with depression, with whatever mental health things anybody is going through, decreased reactivity is only going to help you. And that's one of the things that mindfulness builds into the practice.
Now, on your YouTube, you talk about why you can't slow down even when you're exhausted. What's at the root of that pattern, and how can listeners begin to shift it?
So that video was actually in response to a personal experience that I had where one day I did a short experiment with myself. I was walking somewhere, but I didn't have a specific time that I had to be there. And I noticed I was rushing. Like there was a sense of urgency. I was like walking really fast. And like if there was a green light, to the cars, I was like, oh, can I still make it? Can I cross? Like and I realized, like, why can't I wait 30 seconds for the light to switch for me to cross? Why am I putting myself in danger, at risk, to cross, like, against the car? So when I don't have a specific time that I have to be there. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to take a deep breath and I'm going to intentionally slow down my walk. And it was so hard. Like I could have been at the place I was going to in 15 minutes, and I want to say maybe I added an extra 5. But that extra 5 minutes, I felt it in my bones, in my muscles. Like every part of me wanted to like rush and almost like sprint so that I could get there 5 minutes faster. And so I became really curious, right? Because one of the qualities we cultivate with mindfulness is curiosity, is non-judgment. I wasn't mad at myself for wanting to rush, but I was really curious as to why rushing was my default. And so as soon as I paused and I asked myself that question, a ton of like childhood memories fluttered up about what it means to be slow. For me, that has a lot to do kind of like with my origin story. So I actually moved to the US from Israel when I was 10 years old. And so I came in the middle of fifth grade. Everybody already knew each other. Everybody had their friends. This was their last year at the school. I didn't know anybody. I did not speak English. And English at that point wasn't even my second language, it was my third language. I had a really thick accent and a teacher that I felt like was extremely unsympathetic. And so it felt like I was getting bullied. The teacher wasn't helping me. I didn't have the language. Both of my parents were working. And it was just a time that I don't look back on fondly. I do look back on it with empathy and with compassion for the part of me that went through that. But I realized on my walk to my where I was going that day, um, when I came here, I learned that being slow meant I was stupid. It meant I was ignorant. It meant I wasn't as smart as the other kids. It meant I didn't know what I was doing. It meant that I might be left behind. It meant that I don't deserve to have friends. And even like speaking out loud about it now, like I feel that in my chest because that's exactly what the word slow meant like to me. Like that was the definition that 10-year-old me made of what it means to be a slow person. And so as soon as I like realized that, it was like, of course. Of course I have a hard time slowing down because slowing down means everything bad that I experienced at that age. And the reason I realized it feels so comfortable to walk fast and to rush is because that's how I prove to myself that I'm just as good as anybody else. I'm as quick as the smart kids. I'm just as intelligent as they are. I'm just as successful as they are. I can do just as much as any other person, but only if I go fast.
Thank you for sharing that. That's very relatable and very very vulnerable too. Um,
And
you
you might have
emphasize,
your
yeah,
own story, right? And your listeners might have their own
yeah.
stories. And the reason I shared is just because I want people to take that pause to reflect like, what does slow mean to me? What have I learned about going slow? What does going fast mean to me? What if you are somebody that feels like you're always in a rush, ask yourself, what will happen if I slow down? And just sit with that question and notice what comes up inside of you. Because I would have not had any of those realizations if I didn't allow myself to be with that vulnerable part of me. And when you're always rushing, it's so easy to just keep going and keep bypassing and not give any attention to those vulnerable parts because they're vulnerable. There might be something painful or uncomfortable that you find, but I think you like your mind will be blown by what it is that you do find if you give yourself that time.
Yes, yes. That's so relatable to me because I'm also someone who rushes all the time and seems to always be in a hurry, but for different reasons and because of a different childhood experience. For me, it was um, I was always afraid to be late, so I'm always so early. I'm 10 to 15 minutes early for anything, and I get stressed out if I'm not. And it's definitely rooted in childhood and times when my family like made me late to things, which caused so much
Mm-hmm.
anxiety that now I avoid it at all costs. So
Mm-hmm.
absolutely relate to that. Switching gears a little bit, you emphasize self-trust and then you've mentioned core values. How
Mm-hmm.
do you help clients uncover what their core values are and why is this so foundational for change?
So there's a lot of different ways that you can find out what your core values are. One of my favorite ways is through doing something that's called the core values card sort. And this is a card sort that I created by myself. It's based on other card sorts available out there. So if you're somebody who's interested in this, you can even type into Google or ChatGPT or wherever core values assessment, and you will essentially get a list of different values. And that can help you narrow down what your own personal values are. I use this card sort for myself and with my clients. I have an entire process that I walk people through that's actually available on my website as one of my courses. It's called the Core Values Assessment. Because it's so foundational. So if you're interested, anybody can purchase that from my website. But if you can also just go on Google if you're curious and pull up any list of values and just ask yourself those questions like, well, what is really important to me? What are the values that I want to embody in my life? What direction do I want to be going in? And that will help you in the future with any and every decision that you ever have to make. Because when you don't know, you get to ask yourself, well, what value is this in alignment with. Like, if I make this choice, is that in alignment with my family value or my career value, my honesty value, my compassion value, my kindness value? Whatever those core values are for you. And typically you will have like a handful or even less of the really important values. So, for example, for me in my personal life and in my business, mindfulness, impact, and service are core values. I want to spread mindfulness because I truly see the value in mindfulness. I want to be of service to other people, and I want to create a big positive impact in the world with said mindfulness. So I am constantly coming back to that when I'm reflecting on what decision or choices do I need to make in my life.
I can completely attest to the value of understanding your values. I underwent a similar process about a year and a half ago. Mine involved kind of finding one of those online lists, and there were like
Hmm.
300 words on this
Yes.
list that a
Yep.
lot of them seemed similar, but they were subtle differences that really
Hmm.
kind of added up. And when you do narrow it down to those 5 or 6 values that matter the most to you, it was transformational for me to understand
Hmm.
if these are what are most important to me and the life that I want to have. I spent the rest of that year measuring what I was actually doing against those and seeing where there were misalignments, and where there were misalignments caused me so much stress. That makes a lot
Yes.
of sense. It ended
And
up, yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was just going to add, I think for a
Yeah.
lot of people, that's how they find themselves burnt out, is because they are doing a lot and they are keeping themselves busy and they might always have deadlines or they're rushing. But when they take that step back, they realize that all of these tiny actions that they take are not actually aligned with their values, which is why they feel so exhausted. So a lot of times for folks who are burnt out, we will start at seeing what their core values are and doing that type of like assessment, like you just said, to match up against their life, because that explains a lot of it. And it also gives us a pathway to change. You stop doing the actions that are misaligned and you start taking more actions that are aligned.
Exactly, I agree. What ended up happening to me is I was still working full time in my 30-year corporate career in a high stress environment. But because I had just become aware of what my values were, things that didn't align with some of them, some of the most important ones for me are health and balance and peace.
Mm.
And when I started pushing back in my workplace against the things that were impeding on those values, I got pushed back quite a bit. It started to create conflicts, and it just helped me
Mm.
realize I might not belong here. And I
Mm.
reached my burnout point back in September, and my kind of had a last straw moment at work
Yes.
that resulted in me just suddenly quitting. I walked out on my job, which was completely uncharacteristic of me at that point, shocked everybody. But I've never looked back, and I've never been happier because I'm now in alignment. So I love that you
Hmm.
have kind of made your own little deck that you use and you make available. Something else that you have is your Get It Done Week Sprint, and that's all about micro actions and psychology informed strategies. Can you tell us a little bit more about that? And what's a small actionable practice that you recommend for women that are feeling paralyzed by overwhelm?
Yeah, so what you're talking about was actually my newest offer that I created just at the end of 2025, because I was reflecting on some things that I want to get done before the year is over. And I became overwhelmed. So I'm like, if I'm feeling overwhelmed and I have so many things to do, other people do too. So I decided to create this live experience where people can essentially team up with me during the course of 1 week, and we will keep each other accountable. And I based that Get It Done week on, I essentially turned it into the Get It Done bundle that consists of those three resources. So it does have the Get It Done week, which is like a 5 day sprint to get those like last minute things done that you want to get done. But it also includes two of my frameworks, from stuck to started and from stalled to finished. And I think this is especially relevant for neurodivergent folks, because we might get really excited about something and we start and we sprint, and then motivation drops off. And then it becomes really overwhelming to get back to it. Or we might have a project that is really important, but we've like stalled on it. And like we might have even be at the last 10%, but we just can't get it done. And like that's that stall. And so those are two separate points, like the getting started in the very beginning and then the stalled to like when we start procrastinating and avoiding. And for both of those frameworks, a key component is pausing, because the pausing is where you're going to gain clarity. The pause is where you get to ask yourself, why haven't I started this? Am I afraid of failure? Am I afraid of success? Are there potential negative consequences if I do this? What will happen if I don't succeed? What will happen if I do succeed? And both of those things can be so scary for people, even when it comes to like positive changes. So I've heard you talk before about like losing weight, and that's a journey that I've been on myself. And a lot of people talk about like, well, why wouldn't I want to lose weight? Like it's better for my health. I'm going to feel more confident. I'm going to look better in my clothes. Like what negative consequences could there be? But actually, for a lot of people, there might be a lot of negative consequences. Some people might be afraid of getting unwanted attention from people on the street. For other people, it might be even like unwanted comments or remarks from family members that make you feel bad about yourself and where you've been. And so those are negative consequences that a lot of times run on autopilot in your subconscious, influencing decisions that you make now. And unless you bring them to the surface, you're never going to succeed on that diet or lifestyle change or the workout regime that you're trying to push yourself towards. If you keep just saying, oh, I have to through sheer will and discipline, you're going to fail every time. So that was just one example that has to do with health, but you could apply it to any administrative task you have, any new project that you're working on, a business that you're trying to kickstart, or a closet that you haven't been able to sort. Whatever it is, those are some things that run in the background and keep us stuck from starting or stalled from finishing. And so just to circle back around, the get it done week kind of helps you clean that stuff out in a really quick way so that you can start making progress right now. And you can start feeling like, oh, wow, I can actually do this. I can keep moving forward. And I know exactly what to do next time I'm stalled. And it starts with that pause.
That's exciting. One of the other things I find exciting is that community is really central to your work, especially for those of us who are multi-passionate women who don't fit into a
Yes.
single box. How does being in community support personal growth, and what strengths do you see in women who embrace their many passions?
So I really do believe that we rise together when we are around other people that we perceive as successful, confident, wealthy, abundant, free. It motivates us to kind of rise to that level. And it also helps when we see people that might be like a few steps behind us, like we start putting ourselves in a leadership position, in a mastery position. We start feeling more confident while helping other people. So I do believe it's important to be in community with both people that are a few steps ahead of you as well as a few steps behind you, and everybody benefits. And this is true in mindfulness and meditation. And there's actually a concept called a sangha. So that's a community where people practice mindfulness and meditation together because you get different benefits when you do it in community versus when you practice by yourself. And the same is true, I find, in leadership and entrepreneurship and group projects, right? If you think back on your school years, how many group projects and teamwork did you have to do? And it was in preparation for when you're going to be, for example, in corporate and have to work with the coworkers or work under managers. And it's true when you're a business owner as well. You still have to interact with other people. So I find that I hold myself accountable when I am with those other people, when I am trying to be my best version of myself, like whatever my definition of success is, and I see other people on that path ahead of me. And it makes me feel good knowing that I can help someone else who is dying to be where I am, right? Like, how exciting is that? Like, if you think back to a version of you 10 years ago, can you imagine how she would have reacted knowing where you are now?
Yes, I can actually. She'd be shocked. And what I love about the concept of communities, this is something I had to learn kind of the hard way, and really recently, because until I quit that corporate job, my whole community was built around that identity and that job and those people that I interacted with every day. And because I was out of alignment with my values, I was kind of in the wrong room. I had the wrong community around me, and of
Mm.
course that was very stressful. I recently participated in something called the If I Were Starting Again reflection, which is live right now, actually. I can link that in the show notes. But 17 of us female entrepreneurs were invited to just share a little audio only clip of 5 to 10 minutes. If you were starting your business over again, what would you do differently? And in creating my segment for that, I discovered to my own surprise that building my own new community where I really felt like I belonged is one of the first things I would have done much sooner in my journey. And because I'm now starting to build that and network, I'm just feeling so much more like I belong in the new world
Yes.
that I'm in. And it's made all the difference in the way that I work. Yeah.
Absolutely. And what you just said about belonging, like that is a core need that we all have. Like I think if you look back on Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right, that triangle that says like we need shelter, food, etc., we also need a sense of belonging. And it is core to us feeling safe. And we can only thrive when we are feeling safe. Otherwise, we're constantly in survival mode.
Well, you have mentioned that you love working with heart-led, intentional women entrepreneurs, and you want to help them kind of dream bigger and build self-trust before they reach that last straw moment like I did in my last job. I want to help you connect with those women. Can you tell us about Mindful Mavens and where listeners can find both your free and your paid resources?
Yeah, so Mindful Mavens is the community that I created to be among peers who value emotional mastery, nervous system regulation, values-based living. It's for other multi-passionate women who love talking about like the business aspects and all the nitty-gritty, and who might also have a spiritual curiosity and love talking about like abundance and manifestation and our souls and like the paths that we are living, like this journey that we are all together. Mindfulness to me is very closely related to consciousness. And so it is a community who essentially we all want to raise like the vibration of the consciousness of the world we are currently living in. Like to me, that is just an extension of creating more love and peace in the world, which starts with our individual mindfulness practice. And so Mindful Mavens is essentially that community that I didn't have. I strongly value being in close proximity with people that I want to learn from. And even though, since I started both of my businesses, like at this point, over 5 years ago, I've been in community with other people, but I always felt like I had questions that were unanswered, where I would get lost in a sea of like 2,000 plus members. And like, sure, I could post on the Facebook group and maybe get a response from other people, but it's sort of like where posts go to die and nothing ever happens. Whereas Mindful Mavens is a really high touch community where people can have a back and forth with me. So the whole thing takes place on Telegram because I love like messaging people and I love being in WhatsApp groups and other Telegram groups where I get to communicate directly with people that I am learning from. So I want people to feel like they can ask me questions, they can talk about their vulnerabilities, they can share their biggest dreams and ambitions. And it's not just me supporting them, it's also the other mavens in the group. Except I also bring in my like 15 plus years of being a therapist and the psychology background with all of the skills that I teach my therapy clients so that these other women can apply them in their day-to-day lives, from the really simple skills to like the really complex concepts and topics to really ethereal and kind of like out there things that there might be. So that was to answer your question about mindful mavens, but I feel like there was another question there that I've lost track of.
Yes. Where can listeners find your free and paid resources?
So all of it is on my website, togethermindful.com. I have a category for my free stuff, for my courses, and for my Mindful Mavens community. All that is at togethermindful.com.
I will definitely be checking that out. And I will provide all of your links in the show notes so our listeners can reach out directly. I have just a couple more questions to wrap up, if you don't mind.
Of
One
course.
is, if you could give one piece of advice to women who are feeling like they're behind in life or in business, what would that be?
Well, firstly, you're not. And just kind of like full stop. And this was a big concept that I had to learn as well. Like, there's no such thing as behind on your life because nobody has lived your life before. It's not like there's a manual for how to live Jen's life or how to live Alice's life. Therefore, whatever choices you make are the perfect choices for you because you couldn't have made any other choice. Because if you could have, you would have. And I have a very similar view on mistakes. There's no such thing as making mistakes because nobody has done this before. There's no other choice you could have made but the choice that you have made. So, therefore, it is a lesson and it is a jumping off point for whatever next choice that you make. And this is why our core values are so important because the more mindful you are to what you value, the more you can ensure that the next choice you make is a values based one. So you are not behind, you're exactly where you're supposed to be. And if you want to make sure that you're going where you want to go, know what your values are and be intentional with the choices you make.
Completely agree. As someone who has started over at the young age of 52 and who has earned every one of these gray hairs, there's no better time to start over or to try something new or do anything except right now. Completely agree.
And by the way, that is a mindfulness concept. It's called begin again. Literally, that idea that you can always begin again. Like every breath is an opportunity to begin again. And that's true for business and it's true for life.
Of that inspiration. So there's one last question that I always ask my guests. If everyone listening could walk away with only one message from today, what do you hope that is?
You are enough. It's very simple. Maybe it's cliche to some of you, but enoughness has been so core to my personal journey, my professional journey, my business journey. I really had to live it to learn it, to now teach it. But it starts with just that idea that you can feel enough until eventually it grows into I know that I am enough, and then I feel I am enough. So, wherever you are on that journey, just remember you are enough, whether you feel it currently or not.
Alice, thank you for that. And thank you so much for sharing your story, your wisdom, and your practical tools. For everyone listening, you can find Alice at togethermindful.com, dralicerizzi.com, and on YouTube at Together Mindful. Check out her Mindful Mavens community and all her amazing resources that I will link for you. If you found value in this conversation, I hope you'll consider subscribing, sharing it with a friend, and leaving a 5-star review. These go a long way towards helping others find us. And as always, remember, progress over perfection, and you're never too late to reinvent your story. I'm Jen Fast, and I hope to see you next time on Productive AF.